Welcome, everybody. My name is Ola Potrykus. I'm one of the Shakers. Really delighted to start this year with you in our first session of the year with an amazing supporter, thought provoker, and somebody who we had the pleasure already to host in our unconference, Daniela Landher. I will talk about Daniela in a second. Thank you, Daniela, for joining us. Great to have you again with us. Thanks. We are starting today with a very important topic of belonging. While you're joining us, please make sure to grab your phone and either go with menti.com and entering the code, or you can simply scan the code. There's one question waiting for you on the Mentimeter site, and I'll come back to the Menti in a second. So let's talk a little bit more about Daniela, our great guest today. Daniela will take us through around 20 minutes of lightning talk on the topic of belonging and our longing for it. We had a great conversation with Daniela last year in December about the link between belonging and innovation, what it means. And there is no better person I can imagine having with us on this topic. So thank you, Daniela, for being with us. And if you don't know Daniela, let me tell you, there's a lot to tell about her. She's really passionate about empowering people. She inspires and coaches leaders to transform themselves, their teams, and organizations. She's really focused on building inclusive cultures and driving innovation. Over the course of the last 20 years, she has been engaged in talent management, leadership development, cultural transformation, also like executive coaching, and really helping a team become effective and putting a lot of emphasis on psychological safety. So I'm really looking forward to your insights on psychological safety in linkage with belonging as well. Daniela also obtained her master in change from INSEAD and completed an executive leadership program with Stanford Graduate School of Business. And maybe you also know that Daniela has spent last 15 years with Google, where she led several multinational teams and organizations. And she really guided their senior leaders to build effective teams and drive innovation at Google. What more? There is more, for sure. She's now coaching and advises a different type of leaders, organizations. She's a lecturer at University of Applied Sciences in Business Administration in Zurich, at the EMBA in Digital Leadership. She coaches leaders pursuing an EMBX at ETH and Hochschule St. Gallen. And she offers guest lectures at various universities and serves at several boards and delivers inspiring keynotes. And I cannot wait to introduce her to you and really take you through her lightning talk today. Daniela, I hope I covered everything. I'm sure there is something more to discover about you.
Thank you so much, Ola. This is actually, it's so interesting to hear when someone introduces you. I need to shorten my intro. So this is very good feedback for me. Thank you. But we're not here to learn more about me, actually, but really to speak about a topic that is very close to my heart. And it is something that we call belonging. And maybe let's demystify that a little bit. Today, we're going to look at it from a specific perspective. It isn't necessarily what should we as employers, as companies and organizations do? So we'll have time to think about that in the breakout rooms when we think about communities, but we'll look really deeply at the belonging and the sense of belonging. So please enjoy your lunch. I hope you brought something along to eat, to drink. I would obviously love to see many of you on camera because it gives me feedback. So make sure I can see your face, but I totally understand if you're munching along the way, feel free to also turn off your camera and then just turn it on again in the sessions. Great, I'm gonna switch over to my presentation, and if you can't see it, please shout. And otherwise, if you have any questions, please keep them for the breakout rooms where you will have some opportunity to discuss as well. All right, so when we speak about belonging, one thing that I want to make a connection in people's heads is really belonging isn't just like a luxury topic of, oh, I feel like I belong. Well, that's wonderful. Well, that's a nice to have, but not necessary. It's actually at the core, if you think of Maslow's pyramid in psychology, it's actually part of a fundamental the fundamental foundation of the pyramid. And we need that sense of belonging. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that and also how it's connected to innovation. But let me just step a few steps back and start with the work revolution that is happening and that's in progress, especially since COVID-19 started spreading about 2 years ago, and it came to Europe, it came actually all over the world. But we've seen this unstoppable work revolution. We've had those of you who are parents, we've had children at home, we've had them at home for a while. We were working from home, the office has become our home and vice versa. And we are trying to figure out hybrid, we're trying to figure out remote, we're trying to figure out everything that's got to do with digitization. We are working longer hours, shorter hours, flexible hours. We're doing yoga during lunch breaks. We're doing sessions during lunch breaks. So we're trying to fit it all in and trying to understand, how can I design my life? And when something as big as that happens, it forces us to rethink, to take a step back and think, wait a minute, how do I design it now that I can, now that I'm being forced out of my comfort zone to think about what works for me? And to share just one example, up until last year when I was still with Google, one of the employees from my team, she actually said, we were sharing, how are you organized at home? How do you work? And she said, I have an ironing board and I put my laptop on it because at work I used to have a stand-up desk. And it's so refreshing to hear how we all had to figure out, how do we best work? So this is really what happened. And then it led us to these news articles and headlines of the Great Resignation. People are leaving, people are unhappy, leaders don't know what to do, but it looks like the majority of people are thinking, or almost half of the employees in the US are thinking about leaving their workplace. They're unhappy. So what's going on? And while leaders are trying to understand in this panic mode, what can we do? Should we give you more titles, a faster promotion, more money? We are learning that it's not about money, it's not about the title, but actually there's this crucial factor that I want to belong. Especially now that we are isolated at home, we're disconnected, we want to belong somewhere. And so we're questioning, do I belong? And can I contribute in a meaningful way? And that is making this movement accelerate so fast that people are saying, I'm ready to leave the company, I'm ready to leave my job, unless I can have this meaningful contribution. So let's look at, what does belong even mean? We toy around with this word as if we all knew what it is. And when you actually search a little bit, what is the meaning of belonging? You'll find all kinds of descriptions, but basically you'll find it in Maslow's pyramid. And it's really this being at the right place, but also being within a person's place, to feel that I am at the right place here. This is my place. I have my place here. I belong here. That's the right place. But also means to be a member of a group or an organization, like Shake Up the Workplace, or you name it, any sports club you might be a part of, or any book club, or anything we feel like I can join. I'm welcomed here. I belong here. And so Brené Brown, she just wrote a new book that came out and says that we are wired to love and to be loved and to belong. So when those needs are not met, we don't function the way that we are meant to be. We break, we fall apart, we numb, we ache, and we can also hurt others in the process of that. And it means we get sick. So no surprise that there's this desire for belonging, and everyone speaks about well-being. And how is that connected? But let's take a look at something else here. Where does belonging even sit? So I mentioned earlier, I feel included. I'm here in the right place. Inclusion is one part or one aspect that helps me feel like I belong. But if I'm just included, it doesn't mean that I belong, because can I be my real self? We need diversity. We need to see that it's okay to be different. There are people with different mindsets, different backgrounds, all kinds of differences that have a space here. But we also need equity. We also want to make sure that I am treated in my fair way, which might be different from somebody else, but someone's listening and hearing what I need, and I can contribute in that way. And only when these three come up together, we create that inner space of belonging. So belonging is often mistaken with inclusion, and it's not the same thing. It's a part of inclusion, diversity, and equity. And we'll go a little deeper into that in a moment. But here's another problem. If for us to actually feel that we belong, we need to be authentic. And Brené Brown again said that because we can feel belonging only if we have the courage to share our most authentic selves with people, our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. So unless we have accepted ourselves and we've made peace with our fallibilities, we've made peace with our edges and you know, all the rough things that some people might love or hate, when we have come to that place, and that is at the peak of the Maslow pyramid, then we have this opportunity to feel authentic and to belong. And I'll get more to that in a moment. But let's go deeper again. So what is authenticity? Authenticity, feeling authentic, is the quality of being real or true, not having to pretend. It is also the way we show up in terms of the consistency in words, the consistency in our actions, and the way that we believe in things and show that at the way it manifests itself in actions. It also means we're being true to our own personality, to our spirit and our character. So authenticity is what I hear and what I see and what I experience is the same thing. And that makes someone trust us. So the word trust becomes huge when we think about authenticity. But here's a question. How safe do we actually feel to be authentic? Can we bring our true self really to work all the time? Now, when we look at just one aspect, when people are hired or people are interviewing for a job, you can see here from when we look at marginalized communities, for example, the transgender community, transgender people, only about half of them, actually only about a third of them agree that they can show up with their authentic self. With cisgender, for example, women, men who have been assigned their sex at birth and they identify with that same sex, about half of them say, I can show my authentic self during an interview. Now, if you play that in your head, if only half of the people show up authentic during an interview, will they actually change and become more authentic over time, or will it actually get worse? Does the environment, and that's another topic, but does the environment I'm entering into actually welcome my authenticity, welcome my diversity, welcome my background that is different? Can we have these conversations? That is often a big problem that prevents us from showing up in the way that we truly are and being authentic. So the hypothesis then often is, well, if I fit in, then I belong, which means that if you look at the circles on the left side, I must think and behave in a certain way, and then I will belong, which is mistaken for then I will fit in, which means we dress the same way, we speak the same words, and then we'll become a part of that group, which is more the thinking of a cult, not from a religious perspective, but more of the we are all the same. When we think about a culture where we can add to the culture, where we can innovate, where we can create something new, we look at people that can bring in diversity. And when we mix that, we get that middle where we feel like I can actually add value, but I do feel that this is my group of people because we share the same passion. We are connected by appreciating the same thing, the same person, or the same ideal, but we have the freedom to bring in our diversity. So if we assume that the more we fit in, the more we belong, this will be misleading for us. And that comes at a cost. And the cost is innovation, diversity, and also our own well-being. So when we don't, or when we can't, and what I mean with can't is when the environment doesn't let us, doesn't want us to show up authentically, we sacrifice our true potential in order to fit in. This means that over time, we won't be satisfied with what we can deliver, what we can contribute to this environment. And at some point, we will get frustrated. So authenticity is at the root of that. An environment that embraces this authenticity has the potential to be psychologically safe. It becomes a zone where we can be candid with each other, a space that energizes, where we can challenge each other's thoughts and ideas and the way we approach things without attacking each other's personality. So we separate the thing from the person, and we can have very lively discussions and conversations. And so psychological safety has an incredible connection with authenticity and belonging, because the psychological safety that we experience or we talk about is this shared belief that the environment is conducive to these interpersonal risks without having to be afraid that there will be negative consequences. Meaning, well, if I speak up and I have a different opinion than my boss, I will get fired. If my manager has an opinion and I contradict, I will get a lower bonus, or I will not be picked for the next project. That's a culture of fear. And this comes in tiny little doses and just keeps growing over time and ends up in this danger zone. We're being challenged by a leader. We know it's dangerous. We can't express ourselves. We try to avoid it. So over time, we want to distance ourselves. There's also the blind side, which is my boss just keeps giving me all this good feedback, but behind my back, there's people talking about, I'm not contributing, I'm not delivering. This is my blind side. This is very dangerous because that will just get me out of my surprise. And then what a lot of people mistake for psychological safety is comfort and safety. Oh, we all like each other, we all hug each other, we all feel warm and cuddly, and it's great and wonderful, so I feel psychologically safe. This is actually dangerous, if you will, from a different perspective, because it means we are living in the status quo. We don't go anywhere from that. We just confirm what someone else says. We agree. We just say yes, 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 and we don't contribute. Psychological safety is really this upper right quadrant in this image here, which is called the growth zone. It's the place where we feel safe to express opinions that might not be the same as someone else's. That is how we open our mindset, and where things happen, where things evolve and develop, where we have ideas and say, oh, I've never thought about it from that perspective. That's a really great or interesting input. This is where growth happens, where together, when people come together, you can multiply the effect than just when you're on your own. That is where the magic happens, the sweet spot, the outside the comfort zone. So unless we feel safe, we can't be authentic. If I feel safe, I can be my authentic self. And when I can be my authentic self, only then can I belong. Because then belonging really isn't fitting in, but it is adding value. It is, I'm not fitting into a culture that exists by wearing the same clothes and speaking the same language, but I'm adding to this culture. And so when we interview people, when we meet people, let's look for people who add to our culture and not who fit into our culture and who will just be the yay sayers of what we say. So in a nutshell, if we zoom into this image that I showed you in the beginning with the 3 circles, where we have inclusion, diversity, and equity, and in the center, the space that emerges is called belonging. Belonging really isn't just one thing, and it isn't just a given that if you have inclusion, diversity, and equity, you will belong. Belong actually is made up of other elements, and it's 2 other steps that must happen before you belong. It is to feel safe and to feel safe to be authentic. Then we can belong. And when we can belong truly, that's when we innovate. So if a company culture says, let's innovate, let's all step to the whiteboard and brainstorm lots of ideas, you might be the yay sayer. And think about that. Do you actually feel safe to express a different opinion or ask a question where you think people might laugh at you? This is only then when innovation can happen. And when we can innovate, when we can contribute ideas that make a change, we feel fulfilled. Something comes back and gives us this great energy where we say, this is worth so much more than a salary. It's worth so much more than a promotion. There's something in us that fulfills us, and that will lead to well-being. So when we feel we belong, then we can truly innovate. And then we feel fulfilled and we feel well. So this is the circle of how to get to innovation, you can't get to without being able to belong. And you can't belong without being safe or being authentic. And to get there, you need inclusion, diversity, and equity. Thank you very much for listening in. I'm going to stop presenting and just give it back to Ola.
Thank you so much, Daniela. It was short, sweet, to the point, lots of nuggets of really interesting insights and information, and also great to see the strong connection to psychological safety. I think authenticity, psychological safety, and dropping the need of being and wanting to have the yes sayers and trying to bring the challenge back. And I love also how you reflected on the growth mindset piece from that. So thank you so much. Before I will show you in a second what we got in the Mentimeter. I didn't see any questions coming. I think you were so focused on listening to Daniela. What we can do is we can give you a second to type a question that is important to you to Daniela so we can address it. And we will try to go back to the questions either in between breakout rooms. You can bring some of the questions to the breakout rooms. So that's my invitation. And while you're maybe reflecting on the questions, let me share with you what we got in the Mentimeter. So we've asked you in the Mentimeter, what does it mean to belong? I think lots of what Daniela has shared was really called out by you, and we have 9 people voting. If you want to add your vote, still you can type menti.com and then use the code that is above the screen. I see community very clearly in the middle of the whole thing. I think community topic as such in the internal as well as external world is a big topic. It's, I think, one of the words that will be the word of 2022 and maybe beyond. How do we form communities and how do we allow people to belong, but feel safe to also challenge and bring the new ideas? We cannot continue creating bubbles that just confirm what we already know. We need to start shaking things up, and we need to bring those communities that will push us forward. I think that's what I really believe in, and that's what we stand for at ShakeUp. Safety is here, true to yourself, feeling accepted, feeling valued. I think those are some of the really valuable points that we are getting. By the way, in preparation to this session, what we've asked you is when you were registering, you gave us a lot of really good questions for the session. And together with Daniela, we've plugged them into the breakout rooms. So we'll have 2 rounds of breakout rooms. You'll have 12 minutes to spend together. The groups will be of 4, and you remain in the same groups throughout the session today. So you have an opportunity to meet some fellow change makers, shakers, and engage into a conversation. One thing, if you're for the first time with us, our notion at ShakeUp is to take action. So while you're in the breakout rooms, while you're reflecting on what you've heard from Daniela, think about the one thing you can do as a result of learning today. So remember that, that's a very important thing for us. So let's move to our flow of the session. The first thing we will do is we'll move you into the breakout rooms. You have 12 minutes. And the question is, which inclusive actions help foster a sense of belonging in? And you can discuss either the 3 or choose whatever really speaks to you, to your group. What's the common in your group? Is it a large organization, an agile environment, or maybe both, a large organization with agile environment and a hybrid remote work setting? What we've done to help also bring back the learnings from the breakout rooms, we do have a Padlet for you to input your ideas into Padlet. My secret helpers, Bilge and Isabel, will make sure that the Padlet link is in the chat. Welcome back, everybody. I think some groups are still finalizing their conversations. Breakout rooms insights in Padlet are really rich in ideas directly from the employee perspective, from the member perspective, what we as individuals can do in communities or organizations to create that belonging, but also what organizations can start doing to create that belonging. Lots of different ideas coming in. And I wanted to ask if anyone wants to quickly share what was discussed. Maybe something got you really excited from the breakout room. Now it's your chance to go off the mute button and share with us. Just one person, I think we have time for that. And then I will move on to the questions for Daniela.
Maybe I just do it. If it's okay. Yes, I want to share something that really sparked a lot of controversy in our group, and we stumbled upon it at the end of the breakout, so we couldn't finish it. But we were discussing if it's possible to actually belong to a company, or if it's actually only possible to belong to other people, and then what does it need, you know, to unify under a company to belong. So that's kind of where we got in like a very cool argument, and it was really fun. So maybe that's a point for everybody to ponder.
Love that. Did you get to conclusions, or more you just kept it open and you didn't land any specific conclusion, Isabel?
Yeah, we couldn't finish because really it was like the last minute, 2 minutes of the time. So I'm also happy if Daniela has some thoughts. I saw her smiling.
Yeah,
or anybody else.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. I'm sure lots of people have different opinions, but also different experiences, because I really think it depends on the context. I don't think there's an answer that you can just stamp on it and say that's how it works. If you want to generalize, if I'm going to push myself to generalize in trying to give a little bit of an answer, the smaller the company, or the smaller the circle, the smaller the community, the environment, the easier it is to belong, because you will have more intimate conversations. You will have a better grasp at what is the invisible culture, what are the artifacts of the culture. Can I challenge that? There's immediate feedback. If you imagine you work for a company that has 150,000 employees, and then you're going to say, I belong here. Well, which part of it? And there will be differences. Like a sales team is probably different than an engineering team, and so on, right? So you might say, overall, I identify, and then I'm using the word identify, I identify with the values of the company, but maybe they are not lived necessarily very authentically by everybody. So that then goes back to the question of, can we truly belong? ? And I think it will depend on the context and how do we associate with it. But the smaller, the easier, and the more that we feel we can actually contribute. And it's just one thing to add. One of the also main reasons why people who have a strong desire to add value in a meaningful way will have a harder time generally joining a very large company, because they feel like they are just one of many, versus in a smaller company or an environment where you can change a lot of things. There's probably a higher likeliness of adding, contributing and doing something meaningful.
Wonderful. Daniela, we have 3 minutes for the next breakout. So I'll pick one, maybe 2 questions. Let's see how we manage. There are 2 questions around your perspective on hybrid and remote work and how it impacts the sense of belonging in a company. If you could share some thoughts, that would be super.
Yes, I'm going to cut right to the chase. So I might be disrupting a little bit here. So on one hand, apologies. On the other hand, that's also intentional. I think we are solving the wrong problem. I think we're seeing something emerge at the surface that we don't know how to deal with. But my experience or my observations are really that belonging isn't the problem of hybrid or of virtual. Belonging actually is if we feel safe to speak up against the opinion of our manager. It doesn't matter if we do that virtually or in person. It shouldn't matter. Typically, we do know it's easier to complain over email than if you look in someone's face. So there's definitely something to be said about that. But when we think that belonging starts with feeling safe, then hybrid doesn't become a topic of conversation until we talk about, okay, if we have safety, we can be authentic, we can belong. Well, what are the tools to belong? Then we can talk about hybrid and say, well, generally, I feel like I belong here. But now hybrid or this environment is taking that opportunity to see each other, to bump into each other away. Now we can move to the hybrid conversation. Now we can talk about, do we do like a morning meeting to check in? Do we start every 30-minute meeting with like a 7-minute check-in? How do we feel? Let's just connect as human beings. Is that enough? Is that not enough? Can we create a space to talk about this? Can we talk about the things that we don't have time to talk about? How do we design completely new how we meet? How do we make an effective meeting? And it takes the topic away. So to me, when I see the news articles about how do you create a sense of belonging in a hybrid environment, it's like, well, if you haven't created it without the hybrid environment, don't think that you can just add a hybrid and then create it. So in a way, this is my disruptive view, but I would be open to more observations and thoughts, because it's obviously not something we can just buy on a shelf.
For sure. Thank you for sharing, Daniela, and really good challenge. It doesn't start with hybrid. There are a lot of people asking, Daniela, what are your tips to create belonging in an organization? Maybe instead of sharing all of them, do you have a favorite tip that you could share with us? What's your practice to create belonging in your teams, for example?
Yeah, I think as human beings, I think we probably all want to find out as quickly as possible, can I be safe here? And that would be my advice, like find it out as quickly as possible, because if you feel like in this environment, you are not allowed to speak up, it's a question of time until you'll walk out and feel frustrated. And the question is, maybe you'll say, I'm going to do it because they pay well and I need the money. Fair point. Like no judgment, right? But know why you're doing it. Like start with, why am I doing what I'm doing? But be able to take a step back and understand and see what's going on. So if then some task group gets formed, some task force gets formed, and people say, we are going to create a belonging environment, then is it going to actually work? Am I going to invest my energy in this? Or am I just going to just be like, yeah, whatever you need, I'm just going to check the box so I can get my bonus because that's why I'm here. Like ask yourself, why are you here? And then you know how much you can contribute. And if you ask about what are tips to create it, to do that, there's nothing more powerful than investing time to listen and to understand and to actually switch roles and say, I'm going to see the world through your eyes, from your perspective, because then I generate understanding. That's how you create equity. The big part of, I'm not treating every employee the same. Well, everybody gets the same thing. Well, maybe someone has kids and has different needs, right? So really listening is core to creating that sense that we can have this conversation. And then not just, okay, I heard you and goodbye, but what are my actions that will follow this?
Awesome tip. Thank you so much, Daniela. Great to hear. I will move us to the breakout round number 2 very quickly. Let me share with you what are the topics we are discussing now. You have choice of 3 questions. Probably it's not realistic to cover all. Choose where you're feeling the energy coming, but the 3 questions that came from you are, how can organizations magnify the power of community to create a stronger sense of belonging? What practical questions to ask in order to find out how inclusive work culture is? Example, during interviewing. I think the questions and the listening is something that we can continue. And question number 3, how can communities amplify the sense of belonging, particularly at scale? Back, and even greater to see what was populated on our amazing Padlet input. This will turn definitely into key tips crowdsourced by Shaker community. So many golden nuggets here. I will pick one that I really liked in the point about what are the questions we can ask. For real culture, we can say, if this company was a house, what would it look like and feel like? What would be its design and layout and room temperature? What a wonderful reflection to think about company culture and whether we can belong. Also, lots of different great ideas about both initiatives from bottom up to top down, involving ERGs, involving employees, lots of amazing nuggets here. Again, I will pause for a second to ask if anyone wants to share something that you really felt excited about as an idea from your, or challenged by in your breakout room. I'm gonna call out on somebody that is having a smiley face, Karina Schneider. Do you want to share with us, Karina?
Sure. Hi. Yeah, I think Jane, Yvonne, and I had an interesting discussion. We talked about the interviews, and I think we took a step back and asked what the experience of the interview must feel like before we can actually ask questions around inclusivity in an organization. So, does the interview feel safe? That's one. And the second is, especially, I guess, for larger organizations where experiences can vary, is the interview providing real evidence? Because sometimes what you hear in an interview does not necessarily play out the same way in reality. So I have to say, we didn't come up with concrete questions, but we just took a step back and really thought about what that interview experience is.
Love it. And there was a comment about involving team members in the process of interviewing. I think that's a great way to really expose a candidate into the full team and give them a sense of belonging as such, even before they join the session. Thanks a lot, Karina, for being brave to share with us what happened in the breakout room. With a little bit time left, I have a couple of really good questions still for Daniela. Daniela, over to you again. The first question is something about business case. We hear a lot about, what is the business case for diversity and inclusion? What is the business case for belonging? And how can we move from this is good to have to must have? If you have any tips, we would love to hear them.
I think I'm going to start with probably the most... what am I going to say? All right, let me present this to you. My belief, and this is truly my belief, and is that 10 years from now, there will be a number of companies who now believe they are quite strong and they're quite important, who will no longer be, either be period or be important. Because what we're seeing is that talent isn't going there anymore. So what we're seeing is that people are starting to think about, why am I working where I'm working? Because I want life to matter. So we're seeing this big shift in talent moving around, and some companies that just pay a lot of money to get people might not, this is a hypothesis, get the best people anymore, but more people who just don't find anything else and who are maybe desperate and just need a job, which means their products won't be state of the art, their innovation won't be great, the safety won't be great, etc. So I wonder, will they even be here in the future? Now, if someone comes to me and says, well, what we saw during the pandemic, when the pandemic started, about 70% of companies deprioritized diversity initiatives. I'm like, oh, okay, well, great. You're not doing this to save money. You're actually digging a grave for your company. But people don't see that. And I think a lot of it is, how can we demystify? How can we help companies to understand? But don't put that on, I'm just going to say, don't put that on your shoulders and feel like that's your job to do, because sometimes it's more powerful when you see that from the outside. When the company starts struggling and there's this article on Inc.com or on McKinsey Research, something that just says, hey, big surprise, but unless you invest in your employees, you won't be here. And then it's like, whoa, wake up call. So this might be a bit shocking, but I do think sometimes you got to choose the battles. You got to choose, does your voice really carry? Is your voice really heard? And maybe we're back in the size of a company question, right? The smaller the company, maybe yes, that's true. And then you don't throw data. Like there's this book system, what is it called? Slow and fast and slow thinking, or thinking fast and slow. Mm-hmm. It's tough to read. So you maybe don't have to read all the book, but basically what it's about is there's head thinking, cognitive, and there's gut feeling. Mm-hmm. And while we keep throwing data at people, and I used to do that for years, here's more data to senior leaders, why you should decide in this way. And they'll say, well, bring me more data. Well, I can't really make my decisions, bring me more data. And you just keep gathering data and it's useless. So unless you can get them emotionally and say, it's the right thing to do because people feel right. We're talking about feelings in the workplace. We've never done that before. It's a new environment. And unless we get comfortable with that and we start doing it, we probably won't even be here to have the conversation in the future. So that's kind of my assumption. Might be a bit harsh.
Beautiful. And this links very nicely to what I've heard there was an interview, Brené Brown talks with one of her D&I leads in her work. And they basically said, by asking you to create a business case for diversity and inclusion, you're dehumanizing the whole thing. You're asking me to say why it's worth to put money after a human being, and that was quite powerful. And like, okay, we need to stop that conversation about KPIs and measuring and just think about the human factor of the whole topic. So Tough but real.
If I may add just one quote that really stuck with me for quite a while, that is that money is the currency of the economy, and time and relationships are the currency of life. And I think now this is happening. I think people are recognizing industrialization. When we think about the 80s, let's just create like mass production for everything, for food, for, you know, like everything we do, like clothing, everything. And people became robots to deliver, to produce. We started measuring performance. We just said, okay, instead of slavery where you have someone with a whip, let's just use a different way to put a carrot on a stick in front of your nose. Yeah, you'll get a bonus if you achieve something, right? But it is already dehumanizing. And so there are these efforts of let's humanize organizations. I'm like, well, an organization consists of humans. We should not have to humanize it. But unfortunately, reality is that we can't have these conversations. We aren't talking about this. So by bringing it up, but for that, you need the safe space. So you see, we're like, there's the paradox. No safe space, no conversations. And that's why I say, who's not open to have the conversations probably won't be around.
Wonderful. We have 5 minutes to end the session. And Daniela, I have a challenge for you. Let's imagine that somebody fell asleep at the start of the session and didn't listen to what we just discussed. What is the one thing you would like them to know that is really a big takeaway from today's session?
My biggest takeaway, I'm actually going to show this because I'm a visual person. Now I need to find my screen. Now, yes, you totally did take me off guard here.
Sorry. He likes being spontaneous, you know.
Yep. Okay, got it. I'm coming. Almost ready. Here. I think my biggest takeaway would be we assume that belonging is something that we can do by just being present with somebody, or that we need to fit in. But fitting in is not belonging. So when we, at the center of inclusion, diversity, and equity, when we place belonging, belonging doesn't just come on its own. We need to feel first safe so we can be authentic, so we can belong. And only when we can belong, we can innovate, we can feel fulfilled, and we feel well. So we can say at the age of 70, we look back and say, I have lived a good life and I was able to contribute in a meaningful way.
Thank you so much. And you did very well for being caught on the spot. Thank you for that. Now, a little bit before we ask you to check out, we have something for you as well as a Shake-Up team. Remember, I started the conversations by saying this community is about action taking. So we have a little bit of a cheat sheet for you, what you can do as a result of this session today. 3 things. Firstly, we really invite you to take action, and we'll be asking you in a second, what is the one thing you can do as a result of the session? Of course, you can do other things like read more about the topic. We had some really interesting reads pasted in the chat. Post about our session on social media and share your thoughts so you engage your broader network in the conversation. Schedule a conversation about the topic internally so you really start it yourself. And maybe start a new behavior that you want to bring into your organization. So that's small actions, some cheat sheet for you. Number 2, maybe you actually need some allies, a tribe to go ahead and dig deeper and get support on how do I take action in my organization and beyond. And this is where our community comes to place. We have an invitation for you, only for the people who joined us today. We are actually releasing our lifetime membership offer for you, and more details will be shared in the email to you as a result of the session. What will happen is we will start gathering in more intimate groups to discuss deeper, to reflect on your actions, your challenges, so we can make it more personal to you. Those sessions are open. Of course, we have the breakouts, but we cannot go as deep with them. We also have the Shaker toolkit there that will help you to be equipped to take the action. And session number 3, we always believe that we are here to give and receive, and we believe everybody can be a contributor as well. So that's another invitation to you. If you have a thought, a challenge, a question, something to share, maybe a great case study in your organization, in your team, you can be a contributor and you can reach out to us to say, hey, I would like to write an article. Maybe I would like to host a session with you guys. do let us know. We have this opportunity to start creating a platform that really engages our network. So 3 things for you to think about. And last but not least, what I will do now is we are very curious to see one action, something that you want to commit in front of this group. And we go back to Menti basically to share your idea for one action you will take as a result of this session. So let me share my screen again. It's the same Menti and the same code. We had a couple of people already typing what they will do as a result of the session. And that brings me to 13:45 Zurich time, which is the official end of the session. If you have to drop now, it was great to have you. Thanks a lot for really exciting conversations, lots of awesome ideas in the breakout. And Daniela, thank you so much for all the inspiration and knowledge. You were great as usual. Such a pleasure to have you here. And let's continue the conversation going forward. Thank you so much, everybody.
And thank you, Ola, for organizing. Thank you, team from Shake Up the Workplace, and to all of you for your smiles, your nods, your co-creation contribution, for the hearts that you put on the screens, for the waves. It was lovely to be here with you all. Thank you and happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. Thanks a lot, everyone.